Did you like the new house? My dad asked me that in the middle of Christmas dinner, smiling, proud, completely unaware he had just detonated a bomb. I froze. All the forks stopped midair. My breath caught. I looked around the table, at the warm lights, the shiny ornaments, the fake laughter. My father beamed at me like he'd handed me the world. But I had no idea what he was talking about. What house? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Then I saw her, Marla, my stepmother, her face turning pale, her wineglass trembling just slightly. And that's when it all came crashing down. The house was meant for me, a gift from my dad before he left for his overseas contract. But I never got it. I never even knew it existed. Because she gave it to her son. And now, everyone was about to know the truth. I wasn't always invisible. At least, I don't think I was. When I was little before Mom died, I remember sunlight, laughter, a pair of arms that held me tight and whispered bedtime stories about shooting stars and faraway lands. Her name was Elise, and just like that, she was gone. A blood clot during surgery. I was 5. Dad changed after that. Not instantly, but enough. He was a civil engineer, always working long hours, and after Mom passed, he threw himself even deeper into his job. Within a year, he was flying across states, and later across oceans, managing multi-year infrastructure projects. I stayed with my aunt for a while, then with Grandma, then, eventually, he brought me home. But it wasn't home anymore. Because Marla was there. And so was Kyle, her golden boy. They moved in when I was 9. Marla was beautiful, organized, and praised by neighbors for holding the household together while Richard built the world. But behind the white wine smiles and PTA awards was a woman who treated me like clutter, an obligation she had to sweep around. Kyle was a year older than me, tall, confident, with that clean-cut mom's favorite glow. He got everything. The big room, the new phone, the piano lessons, the praise. I got secondhand sweaters and silent reminders to be more grateful. When Dad was home, which wasn't often, he was warm but distracted. He kissed my forehead, asked about school, told me I was strong like my mother. Then he'd vanish for another 6-month assignment in Qatar or Vancouver, and in those gaps I became less heard, less seen. I wasn't abused, not in the way people write articles about. I wasn't hit, or locked away, or starved. But I was erased. There were family dinners where I wasn't invited. School recitals where no one showed up. Birthday cakes with one candle and no singing. I began to believe I didn't need anything. Not attention, not space, not even fairness. I learned how to disappear politely. When Kyle got accepted into college, Marla threw a party that looked like a wedding. When I got into a local art program, she said, "That's cute. A hobby is good for girls your age." Dad congratulated me over a fuzzy Zoom call from a hotel room in Singapore. Sometimes I wondered if he really knew how I was living, if he ever questioned the dynamic of the house he technically owned. But I convinced myself he was just too busy, too tired, too trusting. And maybe he was. Until this Christmas, when one innocent question shattered the entire illusion. Because he hadn't forgotten me after all. He had bought me a house. He had tried to give me something permanent, something mine. And now I had to find out how it slipped through my finger sand into Kyle's. It was always her house. Even though the deed had my dad's name, even though I was his daughter, even though I lived there for over a decade, it was always her house. Marla chose the curtains, the furniture, the color of the walls. She hosted the book clubs, the holiday brunches, the wine and cheese nights where women complimented her throw pillows and envied her spotless kitchen. Kyle's baby photos lined the hallway. There were none of me. She ran the place like a well-oiled machine, and I was the dust she kept out of view. When I was 16, I asked if I could hang a painting I'd done in the hallway. It was a watercolor of a rainy street, corner subtle, quiet, a little sad. She glanced at it, smiled politely and said, "That's lovely, Callie. Maybe in your room." I stopped offering after that. Every decision filtered through her. what groceries to buy, what shows were acceptable on the living room TV, which chores were mine, and which were too much for Kylie's got exams. She masked control and kindness, but I could feel it like static on my skin. Dad never saw it, or maybe he didn't want to. To him, Marla was grace under pressure, a woman who kept the home together while he was working overseas. She emailed him updates with photos: Kyle winning an award, Kyle fixing the sink, Kyle helping decorate the Christmas tree. If I was ever in the frame, it was accidental, blurry in the background. And Kyle? He played the part perfectly. Good grades, polite handshake, football team. He wasn't cruel, just indifferent. He didn't mock me. He didn't have to. The system was rigged in his favor, and he knew it. One time in senior year, I asked Marla if I could apply to an art program in Chicago. She said, "That's ambitious, but who's gonna pay for that? Your father's money is already going toward Kyle's tuition, and honestly, art is more of a luxury than a career. You should find something stable." Stable? Like what? Folding towels while Kyle builds his future on the foundation that should have been mine? So I stayed in town, took community college classes, worked part-time at a framing shop, drew on the side, saved what little I could, and lived in that house like a long-term guest who never fully unpacked. Then came the housewarming photo. 3 months before Christmas, I saw it on Marla's social media. She and Kyle standing in front of a 2-story colonial-style home with a red door. The caption said, "So proud of my boy, new beginnings." I felt something tighten in my chest, but I didn't ask. I didn't ask why Kyle had moved out. I didn't ask how they could afford such a house. I didn't ask, because I already knew I wouldn't get a real answer. It wasn't until Christmas dinner, when Dad smiled across the roast turkey and asked about the house I got you, that I realized that house was supposed to be mine. I couldn't sleep that night. After the dinner, after Dad's question, after Marla's face drained of all color, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning shadows across the room, replaying every second of the conversation in my mind. "Did you like the new house?" He had said it so casually, so confidently, as if it were old news. And that was what broke me. He really thought I already knew. That I had walked through that red front door, that I had been given keys, that I had unwrapped a future in bricks and beams and sunlight. But I hadn't. Because Marla had given it to Kyle. Not just let him stay there, not just borrowed it for a while. She made it his. And now I couldn't stop wondering. When? How? And most of all, how did I not know this sooner? I woke early the next morning, before anyone else was up. I slipped into Dad's study, a room that Marla rarely entered. It was quiet, always a little cold, and smelled faintly of old books and ink. I opened the file cabinet, fingers trembling. I wasn't looking to betray anyone. I was just searching for proof that I wasn't crazy. The label on the manila folder read, "Property, Hollow Pine." My heart skipped. Inside were printed emails from months ago. Subject lines: house purchase confirmation, transfer of deed, gift title for Callie. My name was typed in black ink on half a dozen legal documents. Dad had sent them from Dubai to Marla's email. She had responded with, "All received. I'll make sure she gets it on her birthday." That birthday had passed 3 months ago. No one had said a word. No key, no tour, no ribbon on the front door. Instead, there was a photo on Marla's Facebook page, Kyle's new beginning. I closed the folder, heart pounding, fingers icy. I wasn't just forgotten, I was rewritten. She had taken something meant for me, a space where I could finally breathe, finally belong, and handed it to someone who already had everything. And Dad? He didn't know. I wanted to scream, not at him but at the gaps. The years he left unguarded, the blind trust he had given a woman who smiled with her lips and lied with her eyes. But more than anything, I wanted to be brave. Not quietly hurt, not politely erased. If that house was meant for me, if my name was on those documents, then I was going to fight for it. Even if it meant burning the illusion down. Even if it meant standing up at the next family dinner and telling the truth. Even if it meant finally asking my father why he was never there to see any of it. I drove to Hollow Pine the next day. I don't know what I expected, maybe that it would feel wrong, foreign, someone else's. But as I turned onto the quiet cul-de-sac lined with young trees and tidy lawns, something inside me clicked. It was peaceful, clean. A single-story colonial with pale blue shutters and a red door, like something out of a postcard. My name should have been on that mailbox. But it wasn't. It said Kyle Preston. I parked across the street and watched. Just watched. A few minutes later, the door opened. Kyle stepped out in a hoodie and joggers, holding a bag of trash. He didn't notice me. Just tossed it into the bin and walked back inside like he'd lived there forever. Like it was his. I wasn't angry at Kyle. Not exactly. He wasn't the one who made the decision. He just benefited from it, like always. Still, my hands were clenched on the steering wheel. Because that house, it was supposed to be mine. A week earlier, I'd been eating ramen in my cramped room, counting tip money from my shift at the art store, and now I knew. There had been a home with my name on it, sitting right here, gifted, legal, waiting, and I'd been cut out without a word. I thought about ringing the doorbell, about marching up and asking him, "Did you know?" But deep down, I already knew the answer. Kyle always knew. Marla never made moves without him knowing. They were a team. He probably helped pick out the couch, the curtains, maybe he even saw the paperwork, and shrugged. After all, why not? He'd grown up with the assumption that everything filtered down to him: praise, privilege, now property. I stayed another 20 minutes, parked like a ghost across the street from the life I was never allowed to have. And then I left. That night, back at the house, Marla's house, I said nothing. I didn't slam doors. I didn't shout. I just watched her. She poured wine, laughed at something on TV. She was relaxed, comfortable, because in her mind, it was done. Her son had the house. I was still under her roof. The lie had held. Until Christmas dinner. Until that one careless question from my father cracked it wide open. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat up rereading the documents I'd scanned from Dad's folder. My name, the notarized transfer, the date, the address, and at the bottom, to be delivered to Callie Monroe upon her 20th honest birthday. It was legally mine. And yet, Kyle had the keys. Kyle had the welcome mat. The more I thought about it, the more something inside me hardened not into rage, but into resolve. Marla had rewritten the story. I was going to take it back. Not in silence, not in secret. At Christmas dinner, with every seat at the table watching. The table was glowing candles flickering in crystal holders, silverware polished to a mirror shine, holiday napkins folded like origami stars. Marla had outdone herself. She always did. Dad sat at the head of the table, freshly shaved, his eyes brighter than I'd seen in years. After 3 months overseas, he was finally home. Kyle sat on his right, Marla on his left. I was across from them, boxed in by extended family uncles, cousins, people I barely knew but who still called me sweetheart with pitying eyes. The roast turkey had just been carved when he said it. "So, Callie," he said, beaming, "did you like the house?" Every fork stopped midair. My throat went dry. I looked at him, then at Marla, then at Kyle. "What house?" I asked, slow and steady. Dad chuckled, confused. "The one on Hollow Pine. I had the deed transferred a few months ago. Didn't Marla show it to you on your birthday?" Silence. Marla's hand froze over her wine glass. Her smile wavered. Kyle looked down at his plate. A pulse of electricity surged through the room. And then, I spoke. "No, I didn't get anything on my birthday. No key, no letter, no house." Dad blinked. "Wait, what?" I turned toward Marla, my voice still calm. "Would you like to explain?" Marla laughed at a high, forced sound. "Callie, don't be dramatic. That house wasn't. I mean, It was too far from your school, and you were already settled here. It made sense for Kyle. You gave it to Kyle, I interrupted. Everyone was staring now. The cousins stopped chewing. A wine glass clinked too hard against the tablecloth. You told Dad you'd give it to me, I continued. You emailed him. I read the emails. I saw the deed. It had my name on it. You took it and handed it to your son. Marla's face had gone pale, her mouth opening and closing like she was searching for air. Kyle looked like he wanted to melt into his chair. Dad sat still too still. Then he turned to her. Marla, is that true? She swallowed hard. Richard, please don't make a scene. It's Christmas. Answer me. I didn't think she needed it. Her voice cracked. She's barely holding a part-time job. She's not even out of community college. She didn't have a plan. Kyle needed a place. He's going to graduate soon. He's responsible. I made that house for Callie, Dad snapped. I sent the money. I put her name on it. That was her 20th birthday gift. You were gone, she shouted. Someone had to make a decision. So you made it for yourself? The room had fallen into a stunned silence. The kind of silence that weighs heavy, pressing into your chest. I could have left it there. I could have let Dad take over, but I'd waited years for this, so I stood up. I've lived in this house like a guest since I was 9. I've watched Kyle get everything from space to praise to property. I didn't ask for much, but that house was finally something that was mine. And you stole it. My hands were shaking, but I didn't care. You smiled through it, lied through it, and Kyle, I turned to him, you moved in knowing it wasn't yours. You didn't even ask why your name was on the mailbox instead of mine. Kyle muttered, I didn't know. You always knew, I said flatly. Dad leaned back in his chair like someone had punched him in the stomach. You told me you'd take care of things, Marla, he said quietly. That I could trust you. Marla tried again. She's being ungrateful. No, he snapped, loud enough to make the youngest cousin flinch. She's being honest. For the first time, someone is. He turned to me. Callie, I'm so sorry. I thought I was doing something right for once. I didn't know. I know, I said, and that's why I'm not angry at you, but I won't let this go quietly either. I pulled the manila folder from under my chair. I had brought it with me, just in case. I spoke to a lawyer, I added. The deed is in my name. The transfer was legal. The house is mine. And if Kyle doesn't leave by the end of the month, I'll file for eviction. Gasps. Kyle stood up, almost knocking his chair over. Are you serious? I'm done being erased, I said. You had your place in this family. Now I'm taking mine. Dad was silent, but his eyes glistened. Marla stood too, her napkin falling to the floor. You're tearing this family apart. No, I said. You did that when you took something that wasn't yours and called it love. I picked up my coat and walked out. The night air was cold and clean. For once, I didn't look back. Dad found me on the front porch 20 minutes later. I was sitting on the steps, wrapped in my coat, staring out at the quiet street where snow had just begun to fall soft and slow, like the world itself was trying to whisper, breathe. He sat down beside me without saying a word. For a while, all we heard was wind and the distant clatter of someone else's celebration down the block. Then he spoke. I didn't know. His voice cracked. I truly didn't know, Callie. I thought I was giving you something that would tell you I hadn't forgotten, that even from across the world I was still thinking of you. I had no idea, Marla. He stopped himself, shook his head. I trusted her, he said. I left you in her hands, thinking she'd take care of you, thinking Kyle would be like a brother to you. I didn't respond right away. Because what could I say? That I understood? That it was okay? It wasn't. But I also didn't want him to carry the shame like a stone for the rest of his life. She made it look like I didn't exist, I said, my breath fogging the cold air. And for a while, I believed her. Dad's eyes glistened again, and this time he didn't look away. I should have been here, he said. I missed everything. Your art, your birthdays, your life. And yet, I whispered, you were the only one who tried to give me something real. He looked down, hands clasped tightly together. The house is yours, he said. I'll make sure Kyle moves out. You won't have to fight this alone. I already fought it, I replied. But I appreciate that now. Finally, you're beside me. We sat there a while longer, the silence between us no longer heavy, but necessary like fresh snow covering cracked ground. Then he reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small wrapped box, nothing flashy, just a simple green bow and a handwritten tag that said, "To Callie, from Dad." "I was going to give this after dinner," he said, sheepish. "It's nothing big." I opened it. Inside was a key. Not to the house. To a small red lockbox. "I filled it with all the letters I meant to send," he said quietly. "All the times I wanted to say I missed you, but didn't know how." I held the box like it was made of glass. Not because it fixed everything, but because it was the first time in years that something truly felt mine. The keys felt heavier than I expected. Not because of weight, but because of what they represented: ownership, closure, and something I never thought I'd have, a place that was mine. 2 weeks after Christmas, Kyle moved out. Quietly, no confrontation. Just a text to Dad that read, "I've left the place clean." I never responded. There was nothing left to say. The day I stepped into the house on Hollow Pine as its rightful owner, the sun poured through the front windows like some kind of apology from the universe. The living room was empty, now no furniture, no family portraits, no stolen narratives. Just space. I walked barefoot across the hardwood floors, letting each step echo. I opened the windows. I let in fresh air. I breathed. I didn't bring much, just a few boxes of clothes, my sketchbooks, my coffee-stained art supplies, and the little red lockbox Dad had given me. I placed it on the shelf by the fireplace. It didn't belong to the past anymore. It belonged here. I painted the walls myself. White in the hallway, soft moss green in the kitchen, a bold navy in my bedroom, rich, deep, like dusk. I hung the watercolor painting Marla once dismissed, right by the front door. People noticed. My friends dropped by with housewarming plants and candles. My professor from community college sent a handwritten card that said, "You're exactly where you were meant to be." And Dad? He showed up every Saturday to help me fix the leaky faucet, repaint the shutters, and, slowly, rebuild something between us. He didn't try to explain anymore. He just showed up. Sometimes, that's enough. In the evenings, I sat on the porch with tea and let myself imagine, not revenge, not resentment, but future. I started drawing again, filling the spare bedroom with canvases and color. I even applied for a design grant, something I never would have dared to do before. This house, this stolen then returned space, became my studio, my home, and my proof that silence doesn't mean surrender. I was never loud. But now, I didn't have to be. I had a front door that opened just for me. A mailbox with my name on it. And a life I was finally living, not waiting for, not apologizing for, and not begging permission to enter.